Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today our mission is to take a single lightning-fast moment in time, a real flashpoint that defined the borders of a continent.
And we're going to stretch it out.
Exactly. We're diving into the Battle of San Jacinto. This was a clash that decided the fate of a massive territory in less time than it takes to properly boil pasta.
It's so strange in military history. Most of these decisive battles are these long slugfests, days or even weeks.
But not this one.
This was 18 minutes, so we're going to shortcut your understanding of how Sam Houston turned this huge military disadvantage into, the founding of a nation.
All happening on the banks of the San Jacinto River.
Near modern-day LaPorte, Texas, on April 25th, 1836.
And the aha moment here, I think, is recognizing that the real action wasn't just those 18 minutes of fighting. It was the strategy before and then the geopolitical chaos that came after.
Right. To really get the scale, you've got Houston's Texan forces, maybe 900 men.
And they were up against the supreme commander of the Mexican military, General Antonio López de Santa Anna,
who had, 1,200, maybe 1,300 men with him. So, this was it. This was the final do-or-die moment of the Texas Revolution.
And that context is so important.
It's key. I mean, yes, the numbers slightly favored Santa Anna, but the Texans were. They were operating under this intense emotional pressure.
This wasn't just politics for them.
No, not at all. This was driven by this deep, visceral outrage among the settlers over Mexican rule. And that outrage had just been stoked to a frenzy by some really brutal events that you probably know well.
We're talking about the Alamo and Goliad.
Exactly.
Those defeats were, they were devastating.
Right.
But they also kind of weaponized the Texan fighting spirit, didn't they? They turned a scattered rebellion into a unified, vengeful army.
They did. That being said, Sam Houston was doing something deeply unpopular leading up to this final fight.
The Runaway Scrape?
That's it. It's often called the Runaway Scrape. Houston was just retreating eastward, relentlessly refusing to engage.
And his own men hated it.
Oh, absolutely. Many of his troops, and definitely the civilians fleeing Santa Anna's army, they saw this as cowardice. Or, at best, just total strategic incompetence.
Which seems odd, given Houston's reputation. Why would he retreat? Why risk mutiny and just tanking morale instead of standing his ground earlier?
Because he was playing the long game. It was a game of terrain and timing.
Okay.
His whole strategy was to retreat until he could build his army's strength and lure Santa Anna into a position he couldn't win from. He knew that the second he stopped, he had to have an overwhelming tactical advantage.
Because he'd never have the number.
Never. So he refused to fight prematurely. And what's fascinating is that his disciplined patience was completely misinterpreted by his enemy.
And that's Santa Anna's big mistake.
The cardinal error.
So given his reputation for being ruthless, for being a brilliant strategist in other campaigns, why make such a rookie error? Why split his superior forces just to chase Houston? Was it just arrogance?
I think it was a lethal combination of arrogance and operational necessity. Well, Santa Anna basically saw the Texans as disorganized bandits, not a real army. He figured the rebellion was crushed after the Alamo and Goliad.
So he wanted the glory.
He wanted the glory of capturing Houston himself and doing it fast. To do that, he outran his own supply lines and critically split his forces to cover multiple escape routes.
So he leaves his main support, his heavy artillery, all behind. He thinks the, 1,200 guys he has with him are more than enough for a quick kill against a retreating, demoralized enemy.
Exactly. He completely lowered his guard, just pure overconfidence.
And by pushing his own troops to exhaustion to chase Houston down.
He inadvertently handed Houston the very tactical advantage he had been waiting months for. It's really a textbook example of how arrogance can just destroy your operational tempo.
Which brings us to the moment of contact. And this is where it gets, really interesting.
18 minutes.
It's a shocking 18 minutes. This wasn't just a confrontation. It was a perfectly executed ambush.
It was. And the sources all point to that critical element of surprise, which was rooted in a sort of cultural vulnerability.
The siesta.
It was a surprise afternoon attack.
Yeah.
This is fundamental. Santa Anna's troops, totally exhausted from that forced march, they'd been promised rest.
And they were caught completely off guard.
Completely. Along the San Jacinto River, during their afternoon siesta, picket lines relaxed, the defensive breastworks, these simple fortifications, they were undermanned.
And Houston just exploited that with brutal effectiveness. We're not talking about a slow, measured advance here, are we?
Oh, no. The Texan infantry was masked by the terrain.
A slight rise and some trees, I think.
Exactly, masked until the last possible second before they launched a full screaming charge across the open field.
And that charge was fueled by adrenaline and revenge.
Absolutely. We know their battle cry was, "Remember the Alamo, remember Goliad."
That's not a call for disciplined maneuvers.
No, it's a demand for retribution.
Yeah.
They fired at close range and just, immediately overran the Mexican defensive lines.
I have to just pause on that image. I mean, imagine being jarred awake from a dead sleep, exhausted, disoriented.
And the first thing you hear is 900 men screaming, running right at you, firing muskets and rifles.
There's no time to organize, no time to find your officer, no time to form a counterattack.
And that sudden total collapse is what decided the battle almost instantaneously. Once the breastworks were breached, the fight turned into a rout.
And the chase was on.
A relentless pursuit, pushing the fleeing Mexican soldiers into the nearby marshlands, which just became a death trap.
Yeah.
The sources say the marshes were literally filled with bodies.
And the casualty count really reflect that terrifying asymmetry. This is where the sheer lopsided nature of this thing really sinks in.
It's hard to grasp.
So let's just analyze the numbers for you, the listener, to get the human cost of this 18-minute slaughter.
Okay, so for Santa Anna's army, 630 killed, 200 wounded, and a staggering 730 captured.
That's an annihilation of nearly the entire force he brought.
It is. Now the Texan losses, and this is why historians still study this. Only 9 dead.
Nine dead. That level of disproportionate outcome is it's astonishing.
It really is.
It wasn't just a victory, it was a demonstration of the power of surprise, timing, and pure vengeance against a totally disorganized enemy.
Which immediately brings up the next problem.
What do you do with the 700 men you just captured? And more importantly, what do you do with the highest value capture of them all?
Exactly. The swift total collapse of his forces meant capturing General Santa Anna was inevitable, but actually finding him was a whole other drama.
He wasn't captured in his uniform, was he?
No, he'd famously changed into a common soldier's uniform to try and escape.
But his vanity betrayed him.
It did. He was found hiding in the marsh, and they didn't identify him by his rank, but by his highly noticeable silk stockings and fine linen shirt. He was brought before a wounded Sam Houston.
So capturing the president of Mexico and the supreme commander of its army, that immediately changes the entire political landscape. This capture forces the negotiations that lead directly to the creation of the Republic of Texas. We're talking about the treaties of Velasco.
And this is where we stop talking about bullets and start talking about boundaries.
Right.
Because these treaties, they are the legal flashpoint that dictates the next century of conflict. Because Santa Anna was a captive, the treaties were immediately disputed by the Mexican government,
creating a decade of pure uncertainty.
And there were 2 of them, right? The sources say there was a public treaty and a secret one. What was the critical difference there?
Well, the public treaty was pretty straightforward. It was a ceasefire. It required Santa Anna to agree to withdraw all remaining Mexican troops south of the Rio Grande.
So it formally ended the military campaign.
Right. But the secret treaty. That's the key to the future.
Tell us about that.
The secret treaty specified that in exchange for his own release and safe passage back to Mexico, Santa Anna would recognize Texas independence.
And this is the big one.
And, more importantly, lobby the Mexican government to accept the boundary between Texas and Mexico as the Rio Grande.
Which the Mexican government, naturally, immediately rejected.
Both of them, the treaty and the boundary.
Correct. Mexico argued that Santa Anna, since he was a prisoner of war, had signed under duress.
So the documents were invalid.
Invalid under international law. They were willing to accept the ceasefire, the stopping of the fighting, but they absolutely refused to acknowledge Texas's independence or that Rio Grande boundary. For them, the border was still the Nueces River.
So this single 18-minute victory establishes the Republic of Texas, but it also embeds a violent, decade-long border dispute right into the heart of the continent.
Exactly. And now we have to shift focus from the immediate victory in 1836 to the geopolitical map that came after.
Right. For the next 10 years, you have the Republic of Texas existing as a sovereign nation. But it was fragile.
Fragile how?
Economically, it was a total mess. Massive debt, no real currency. And politically, it was incredibly vulnerable.
Because Mexico never gave up.
Never. The Mexican government, even though they'd pulled their main forces back, never stopped trying to reclaim the territory. They were constantly fighting border skirmishes. It was just an untenable situation for the new nation.
So The Republic of Texas is born from this incredible victory, but it lives under a constant existential threat.
Which explains why U.S. annexation, which finally happened in 1845, was so appealing to Texas. But that move, that was the final fuse, wasn't it?
It was the catalyst that ignited a much larger conflict. When the U.S. annexed Texas, they also inherited that secret treaty's boundary claim.
That the border was the Rio Grande.
Yes. So for Mexico, this wasn't just annexation, it was an invasion of their sovereign territory they had never officially given up.
And if we connect this to the bigger picture for you, the listener, this 18-minute fight at San Jacinto is what basically pre-programmed the Mexican-American War.
Absolutely.
That war, which started in 1846, was fought fundamentally over the disputed land created by Santa Anna's captured signature.
And the outcome of that war is the ultimate consequence of Houston's initial gamble. The Mexican-American War led to the U.S. acquiring the massive Mexican cession,
Which is California, Nevada, Utah, Arizona.
and parts of Wyoming, Colorado, and New Mexico.
All of that territory. That huge swath of the map that defines the modern American Southwest. You can track its legal and strategic origin straight back to a single tactical gamble executed during a Mexican siesta.
It's incredible when you think about it that way.
Those 18 minutes at San Jacinto didn't just win independence for one territory. They fundamentally altered the economic, cultural, and political path of the entire continent.
It's a textbook lesson, really. A lesson in how timing and surprise, when you leverage them against an enemy's overconfidence, can trump sheer numbers.
Houston's patient maneuvering, his strategic retreat, that was more impactful than all the bullets fired that day.
It was, which I think raises an important question for you to consider. How often does the political maneuver, the signing of a treaty under duress, the setting of an artificial boundary, how often does that carry greater, longer-lasting weight than the actual military victory itself?
That's a great point. The outcome of the Mexican-American War wasn't just decided by battles in 1846.
No, it was decided by a disputed signature on a piece of paper back in 1836.
So as you think about that initial 18-minute victory, a victory that set the stage for two wars and reshaped the continent, consider how often the biggest historical dominoes are actually toppled by the fastest, shortest conflicts.
Was San Jacinto a lucky triumph of fate? Or was it a perfect execution of genius? I think that's the tension at the very heart of this deep dive.
Welcome to the deep dive. Today we're talking about one of the most decisive moments in North American history.
The Battle of San Jacinto, 1836.
Exactly. And it's not a long campaign we're looking at. This was a single lightning-fast fight that basically secured Texas independence from Mexico in an instant.
Right. And while most people focus on the surprise attack, the action on the field, we're going a layer deeper.
We're looking at the org chart.
We are. Our mission today is a forensic analysis. We're looking at the command structure, the hierarchy on both sides. We're pulling out the names, the specific roles that really dictated how this whole thing went down so quickly.
And what's so interesting right from the start, when you look at the sources, is this huge contrast.
A paradox, really.
Yeah. You've got the Mexican army, which was experienced, professional, better equipped by pretty much all accounts. And they're facing this Texan force that should have been the underdog, but they weren't. The difference, it seems, boils down to how they organize their leaders.
And that makes us ask a really fundamental question. We want you, the listener, to keep this in mind as we go. When the stakes are this high, what matters more?
Is it the resources and the experience?
Or is it clarity, cohesion, a command structure where every single person knows their job? We're going to start by looking at the organizational choices of the winners.
Okay, let's unpack the Texan side then. The architects of this victory. At the very top, the whole operation really rests on one man, General Sam Houston.
He's the overall commander, of course, the ultimate decision maker. But, a general is only as good as the structure he builds.
And Houston's was precise.
Incredibly precise. If you look at how the forces were laid out, they weren't set up for a long siege. They were designed for one single coordinated shock attack.
So every piece had to fit perfectly.
It did, which required crystal clear delegation. The units were arranged with very specific commanders for very specific tactical jobs.
So give us that lineup, because understanding the deployment is, I think, key to understanding the whole battle.
Okay, so we can break the main battle line into three parts. First, you've got the center. This is your anchor.
The main body of the force.
Exactly, designed to hold the line and just push forward. And that crucial job went to Colonel Edward Burleson. He had the weight of the army right there with him.
So Burleson holds the center. But a battle line isn't static, right? You need dynamic parts, the wings.
And that's where Colonel Sidney Sherman comes in. He was given command of the left wing.
And his role was to be the hammer.
A perfect way to put it. In Houston's plan, the left wing was the shock force. His job was to hit the enemy flank hard and fast to start the rout. It's less about holding ground and more about just overwhelming them immediately.
So you need an aggressive leader for that.
You do. Someone who can keep their unit focused and moving under fire.
Okay, so Burleson in the center, Sherman on the left driving the attack. That leaves the other side of the field, the right flank, which is where things get a bit more specialized.
Yes, and this is a really smart piece of the Texan deployment. On the extreme right flank, you had the cavalry, commanded by Mirabeau B. Lamar.
And the cavalry's job is speed.
Speed and a dual role here. First, to protect the Texan flank, but more importantly, to provide that speed for the pursuit once Sherman's attack started to work.
So if Sherman breaks the line,
Lamar ensures the chaos is total. He makes sure no one can regroup. So that whole arrangement center, left wing, right flank cavalry, it shows Houston executing this perfect coordinated strategy.
it's way more organized than the sort of ragtag revolutionary image you sometimes get.
Oh, absolutely. And it goes even deeper. You have specialized support units too.
Right, the sources mention artillery.
They do. The artillery was commanded by Colonel George W. Hockley, and he wasn't just out there on his own. Lieutenant Colonel Henry Millard was supporting him, making sure the logistics, the ammunition, all of that was in place.
Good artillery needs focus.
It does. And speaking of focus, there's another detail in the sources that is so often overlooked, the role of the Tejano fighters.
Yes. I mean, they were fighting for their home, but not necessarily under the flag people might expect.
It's a critical layer of complexity. Juan Seguin, a very respected Tejano leader, was there guiding his men, allied with the Texans.
Which would have been essential for local knowledge, right?
Essential. Militarily, they knew the terrain in a way an Anglo commander just wouldn't. But also, politically, their presence showed this wasn't just some foreign conflict. It was a broader struggle for the territory's future.
So if you put that all together, Houston on top, delegating to Burleson, Sherman, Lamar, with Hockley's artillery and Seguin's expertise, you see a force built for one purpose.
Speed, clarity, and surprise. It was a machine where every part knew its role, which makes their victory seem less like luck and more like, preparation.
Okay, so now we have to turn to the other side of the field.
The Mexican forces. And here's that paradox again. Superior experience, better equipment, but a total crushing loss. So we have to look really closely at their command structure.
And they started with what should have been a massive advantage. Their overall commander was General Antonio López de Santa Anna.
The president of Mexico himself, a figure of immense power.
And he was right there on the field. The sources say he was personally leading about 600 men.
He was. And for us, looking at command structure, that is a huge red flag.
Why is that?
Well, when your top strategic leader, the commander-in-chief, is busy directing a single small tactical unit,
His ability to see the whole battlefield, to coordinate everything else, is compromised.
it's massively compromised. It's a difference between being a CEO and being a shift supervisor on the factory floor. When the factory's on fire, you need the CEO focused on the big picture.
Not worrying about where one widget goes.
Precisely. And Santa Anna wasn't the only general there. You also had General Martin Perfecto de Cos, you had Castrillon, Almonte, all experienced men leading their own contingents.
So now we get to the core of it. The sources are really explicit here. They say the defeat was partly because of split forces and leadership issues. What did that actually mean on the ground?
It means there's no central decisive coordination. With Santa Anna focused on his 600 men, he's basically taken himself out of the strategic loop at the most critical moment.
So General Cos and the others were operating more or less on their own.
Likely, yes. Without clear, up-to-the-minute communication from the top as this incredibly fast Texan attack is unfolding all around them.
So when Sherman's left wing comes charging in and Lamar is sweeping the flank,
The Mexican response isn't one unified, coordinated counterattack. It's a series of localized, independent reactions, each commander trying to solve the problem right in front of him.
they were fragmented.
Exactly. The Texans had one plan executed by leaders who knew their exact roles. The Mexicans had experienced leaders, but without that unified command, they were defensively broken. That structural weakness became a huge liability the second the attack started.
It almost sounds like their leadership structure was built for a different kind of war. maybe a more traditional, stable campaign.
It could be. But it was catastrophically unfit for a high-speed surprise attack. They didn't have the organizational agility.
And Houston's plan just exploited that perfectly.
It gave his plan a massive boost. That deployment, Burleson in the center, Sherman on the wing, it was designed to create and then capitalize on exactly that kind of confusion.
So they didn't just win a fight. They executed a strategy that leveraged their opponent's biggest organizational weakness.
Yes. Organization itself became a weapon. The speed of the victory wasn't just about fighting spirit, it was about the efficiency of their command structure, while the Mexican forces were struggling with those split forces.
And that really is the big takeaway when you synthesize these sources.
It is. The actions of these named Texan commanders, Houston, Sherman, Burleson, Lamar, Seguin, led directly to a swift victory. A victory that, and this is a direct quote, ensured Texas independence from Mexico. On that day, the difference between an experienced army and an organized army was everything.
This whole deep dive really shows that to understand military history, you can't just look at the battle lines. You have to look at the chain of command.
You really do.
For me, the most surprising thing we've pulled out is just how coordinated and purpose-built the Texan organization was, and how sharply that contrasts with the fragmentation on the Mexican side, who should have had every advantage.
And that brings us to a final thought for you to take away, one that applies far beyond any battlefield.
Okay.
If our sources show that even the most experienced, best-equipped organization can be defeated because of split forces and leadership issues...
Because of bad organization.
Right, because of a broken command structure. What essential lesson does San Jacinto teach us about command unity and clarity in our own high-stakes environments, even when you think you have all the resources in the world?
That's a powerful thought.
Think about it. Think about the chaos that can happen when the CEO decides to personally manage the company's social media account. You know, it's a distraction from the big picture. That tension between getting involved on the ground and maintaining strategic overview is a lesson written in blood at San Jacinto. Okay, let's just dive right in. We're going back to 1836. But, you know, not to the actual battlefield of San Jacinto.
Right.
We're looking at what happened right after. The crucial, truly explosive weeks when a military victory had to somehow instantly become a political reality.
Yeah, this wasn't just the end of a war.
No, it was the messy, chaotic birth of the Republic of Texas. So our mission today is to really get into the immediate political fallout. We're going to focus on the treaties of Velasco.
The starting point for everything.
Exactly. How did this sudden leverage capturing Santa Anna somehow stabilize this really volatile Texan leadership? And just as important, how did that move spark a crisis in Mexico that would last for a decade?
Well, what the sources show is just a classic case of a government being forged under, extreme pressure. The Texan government had been a provisional mess. Just barely holding it together.
It was all competing egos, wasn't it?
Totally. More ego than strategy. And then boom, they suddenly have the highest stakes negotiating chip you can possibly imagine. That one fact just changes the entire balance of power.
So we're going to connect those dots.
We are. We're going to go from the battlefield to the Constitution, and we'll explore why the very foundation of that new government, those treaties, was immediately rejected by Mexico, which, basically guaranteed an unstable future from day one.
Okay, so let's set the scene. April 21st, 1836, Santa Anna, the president of Mexico, is captured.
The fighting stops.
And the high-stakes political poker game begins. For the Texan leadership, it was an unexpected gift. They had to capitalize on it. And fast, before public opinion or, an escape attempt ruined everything.
They were on a clock.
A very tight one. And that desperation leaves interim President David G. Burnett and his team to negotiate the treaties of Velasco. They're signed on May 14th, 1836.
And that date. That's the moment.
That's the moment they try to put it all down on paper.
Yeah.
Formalize independence.
What's so fascinating here, though, is that the Texans didn't see this as just a simple ceasefire. Not at all.
No.
They saw Santa Anna's capture as a golden ticket, a chance to force their legitimacy onto the world stage. And the sources, they detail these staggering pledges Santa Anna was forced to make. This was the scaffolding for the entire republic.
So what were they? What did they get them to sign?
Okay, so the first point, and this one is the most geographically aggressive, was Santa Anna's promise to pull all Mexican forces back to the other side of the Rio Grande.
Which is a huge deal.
A huge deal. For you listening, this is not just a line on a map. This is the seed of a future war. Before this, the accepted border of the Mexican province of Texas was the Nueces River.
That's a massive difference. We're talking hundreds of miles.
Right. You're basically doubling the size of the territory they claimed, pushing the boundary way south, way west.
So they weren't just securing independence, they were making a huge land grab.
An absolutely opportunistic one.
Yeah.
And from Mexico's point of view, that alone made any agreement invalid, coercion or not.
Okay, so that's point one. What
Point two was more straightforward.
Yeah.
Immediate halt to the fighting and exchange of prisoners. But the third one, that was the most ambitious political demand. Santa Anna had to personally promise to go back to Mexico City and advocate for Texas independence.
Wow. I mean, that's an incredible set of concessions to get from one captive. But it also brings us to this really intense human drama that's happening on the ground.
Oh, yeah.
Because Burnett and the politicians are trying to secure this international deal, but their own army, the settlers, they are furious.
The pressure was immense. You have to imagine that this army just lost friends, family, comrades, and now they've captured the man they see as a mass murderer for what he did at the Alamo and Goliad.
They want revenge.
They want blood. The sources show this dramatic internal conflict. The public and the military are demanding Santa Anna's execution. But that demand runs completely counter to the cold, pragmatic need to use him to get political concessions.
If they kill him, the treaty is worthless.
Exactly. The whole thing falls apart. The political leverage is gone.
Yeah.
And this conflict was so real that Burnett's provisional government could barely control its own army.
So they signed the treaties in mid-May.
Right, but his actual release keeps getting delayed. They were terrified. Their own soldiers would just lynch him the second he walked free. It was that tense.
And this is where the whole thing pivots. After that moment of peril, somehow the victory and the treaties start to act as a political stabilizer. It creates the legitimacy that the provisional government never really had. I mean, before San Jacinto, the Texan leadership was a mess.
A total mess.
You had Sam Houston focused on the military, clashing with President Burnett, who was trying to run the administration. They were rivals.
Always undermining each other. The whole system was just fractious.
But that instability just vanishes after the victory.
Well, success has a way of unifying people.
All right.
Suddenly, they had two things they didn't have before. A decisive military win and a signed agreement from the enemy leader, no matter how shaky it was.
The time for infighting was over.
The time for nation building had begun, and they moved so fast.
Incredibly fast. An absolute rush to formalize everything. Elections were held just 4 months later in September 1836.
And in those elections, the voters had three critical jobs. First, they elect the war hero, Sam Houston, as the first president.
Obvious choice.
The only choice, really. Second, and this is crucial for the legal side of things, they ratify the Constitution of 1836. That gives them their legal framework.
Okay, so President, Constitution.
But electing Houston wasn't just about a figurehead. It was about creating a functional, modern government. He immediately forms a cabinet.
Who does he pick?
Mirabel Lamar is vice president. And then he names secretaries for the most vital jobs: war, treasury, and state. And you have to think about what those specific choices signal to the rest of the world.
It signals they're serious.
Because
They're not just, playing government. A Secretary of War for Defense, a Secretary of Treasury to manage their massive debt, and a Secretary of State to get the diplomatic recognition they desperately need.
It's the definition of moving from a chaotic revolutionary group to a functioning state in record time.
They basically willed a nation into being.
In just a few months, yeah. They went from this unstable collection of leaders to a structured government with a constitution and elected leaders.
But there's that one other detail from the 1836 election we can't just skip over.
The big one.
Voters ratified the Constitution, they elected a president, but they also approved a resolution calling for immediate U.S. annexation.
It's the ultimate paradox of the whole situation.
Right.
I mean, it's the perfect synthesis point for what we're talking about. Even as they're building the architecture of a brand new republic, they're simultaneously voting to abolish it, or at least to merge it into a bigger, more powerful country.
It says so much about how fragile they knew their situation was.
It really does. It shows they knew their independence was probably temporary unless the United States had their back. They didn't trust their own ability to survive in the long run.
Okay, so that's the internal story. Now let's pivot. We have to look south of the border, because this is where it gets really interesting. The independence Texas just declared was, from day one, contested.
Fundamentally contested. Mexico's reaction was immediate and Completely unwavering.
Rejection.
Total rejection. They were working from a completely different legal and emotional place. The sources are clear. The treaties of Velasco were officially rejected on the grounds of coercion.
He signed it as a prisoner.
Exactly. So the agreement is invalid. They simply refused to recognize Texas independence.
But it's more than just that, isn't it? The legal argument was stronger.
It was much stronger. And this is important for the listener. Mexican authorities argued that even if, it's a big if, even if Santa Anna had signed it willingly, he had zero constitutional authority to give away national territory.
Only the Mexican Congress could do that.
Only the Mexican Congress. So the treaties, especially that aggressive Rio Grande border claim, were legally just worthless pieces of paper to them.
So Texas builds its entire foundation on an agreement that Mexico sees as illegal on two different levels.
The duress of the signer and the lack of authority of the signer.
Yeah, it's a guarantee of future conflict.
Absolutely. And you have to understand, this defeat wasn't just a political problem for Mexico. It was a profound national trauma. The loss led to widespread national mourning. It was a crisis of the state itself.
The government collapses.
Pretty much. The political system falls into turmoil. It leads to immediate military shifts, political reshuffling. The centralist faction in Mexico City, they sort of capitalize on Santa Anna's failure.
It created a power vacuum.
It did, and it led to years of internal instability, revolving door governments. And that crisis, that internal chaos, is actually what prevented Mexico from responding immediately.
So they lost the land, they lost their president, but they're still legally maintaining that Texas is a rebellious province.
Precisely. And that's what bought Texas time. It's so important. Despite all the outrage and the non-recognition, there was no immediate reinvasion.
They couldn't mount one.
They couldn't. The internal chaos, the cost of another war, it meant they couldn't act on their legal claim right away. The threat was still there, but the timing gave the Texans a crucial window to stabilize and govern.
Which leaves us with this incredible conflict at the heart of the new republic. I mean, on one hand, Texas has all the pieces of a modern nation.
Right.
A constitution, a president, a cabinet with secretaries of war, treasury, and state. But on the other hand, its massive neighbor sees its entire existence as illegitimate.
A sham. Founded on a coerced, worthless agreement. And holding on to territory that was never rightfully theirs.
That dynamic, the powerful internal stability versus the total external denial, that feels like the key takeaway from this deep dive.
I think so.
The treaties of Velasco were the starting gun. They forced these bickering leaders into effective action. But Mexico's rejection meant the republic was born into a state of guaranteed, unending conflict.
And if you connect that to the bigger picture, the stability from Houston's election was internal. It was psychological. They solidified their own government, their own morale.
But the threat never went away.
Never. The existential threat was always external because Mexico's legal claim was powerful and persistent. That claim of coercion meant Texas could never truly be at peace. It always had to be on a war footing.
It also creates a really interesting test case for international law.
It really does. You see how a coerced treaty just instantly fails to create legitimate borders or diplomatic recognition?
Yeah.
For the first time, Texas had to act like a real government, collect taxes, defend its borders, conduct diplomacy, all while knowing its very right to exist was disputed by a much bigger power.
Which brings us back to that first strange choice the Texans made in 1836. And it leaves us with a final provocative thought for you to think about. While the Texans were successfully building this serious, functional, republic ratifying a constitution, electing a cabinet with secretaries of war, treasury, and state, that same new nation in the very same election voted for immediate U.S. annexation. So what stands out to you about a republic that forms a detailed, structured government, but at its very moment of birth, instantly votes to end its own independence? They were building a nation while simultaneously applying for a transfer of ownership, and that paradox right there defines the entire 10 years of the Texas Republic.